What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Scott and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. On the channel recently, we've had a few fun hypothetical discussions on whether or not it would be worthwhile becoming a ghoul, synth, or super mutant in the Fallout universe. Today we thought it would be fun to apply the same hypothetical discussion to the Elder Scrolls universe, particularly talking about a vampire. Being a vampire, is it worth it? Now this one is a fairly loaded question with whole chunks to unpack and discuss: morals, afterlife, gods, souls, types of vampires, bloodlines, vampire hunters, living in society, and all those things that would factor into your life as a vampire in the Elder Scrolls universe. Now we will be looking at this from a lore perspective and understanding that you can't simply get the Necromage perk and become Superman because perks are a gameplay function. We will be focusing more on the lore side of things. However, we will take into account the passive benefits and negatives the vampires of Tamriel receive as part of their condition. But before we get into the meat of the video and start discussing the pros and cons of vampirehood, it's probably a good idea to give everyone a foundational knowledge of what a vampire generally is and how they came about, as well as how they fit into the metaphysical world. So, to start with the ancient tale of the first vampire, Lemay Balefag. Molag Bal is the Daedric Prince of Domination, and he had a great dislike for the Aedra Arche, who was prideful. Arche's sphere of influence was the cycle of life and death, and Molag Bal thought he would go and stir up trouble. So in a newly formed Tamriel, Molag Bal travelled and came upon a Nedic woman named Lemay Balefag, whom he proceeded to savagely rape. Lemay was in poor condition when she was found and nursed by nomads, but her wounds were so severe she eventually died in their care. They were to give her a proper funeral, and on the night of her cremation, Lemay rose from the dead and brutally murdered every single one of the nomads. After the bloody frenzy, she came to her senses and begged Arche to help her poor soul, but Arche abandoned her, and for this she vowed to spread vampirism, spitting in the face of death, creating many undead abominations. Now, not all bloodlines of vampires descended from Lemay. Some bloodlines, such as the Volca Ha bloodline, were gifted directly to the mortals from Molag Bal. However, it would be safe to assume that most vampires of Tamriel do share some vampiric ancestry with Lemay Balefag, the first vampire. In summary, vampires are undead creatures created by Molag Bal, the Daedric Prince of Domination, and this was done to piss off Arche, one of the divines. So, what does this mean for you? You, as a vampire prospect, you are hypothetically living in Tamriel and you are trying to decide whether or not being a vampire is worth it. As a vampire, you are immortal. You do not age, you can live thousands of years and be perfectly fine, but you can still be killed. And what happens if you are? There are many afterlives in the Elder Scrolls universe, ranging from Sovngarde for the Nordic heroes to Hircine's hunting grounds for those afflicted with the mark of a werebeast. Your soul afterlife can go to many different locations, and depending on your religious allegiances, cultures, and conditions. But what if you're a vampire? You may very well live forever, but what if you kick the bucket? What if that crossbow bolt hits the right spot? Well, it seems like from what I could find that there is no 100% confirmed answer. However, the most likely theory seems to be that your soul is claimed by Molag Bal and you will be pulled into the realm of Coldharbour. Once again, this isn't confirmed, but I'm going to follow the same idea as is the go with werebeasts. The Daedric Prince Hircine created werebeasts. Those who become werebeasts forfeit their soul to Hircine, and when they die, they will hunt forever in his realm. I feel as if it's a safe assumption to say that you are a vampire, you will be claimed by the creator of vampires, Molag Bal. Now, the point I'm making here is that if I were to become a vampire, dying would indeed be a risk to my soul, considering that you will be living out eternity in Coldharbour, the realm of Molag Bal, one of the nastiest Daedric princes who seeks to enslave, dominate, and rape. And don't go thinking it's all latex and BDSM gear. If you've played ESO, then you will know that Coldharbour does not look like an appetizing place, nor is Molag Bal the preferred holder of your soul. So the first thing to consider is how important the afterlife with your desired gods is, and would you take the risk? Being the vampire itself makes you powerful and immortal, but if you do die, it could very well be an eternity of misery. Anyways, let's get on to the physical aspects. Let's actually consider life as a vampire first. What's that like? We will go over the general traits first, and then dive into some clan and bloodline specifics. As we mentioned before, immortality is part of the package. You will not age a day further from the day you are bitten, as evidenced particularly by Babette in the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary of Skyrim. She is hundreds of years old, but still remains in the body of a child, the age of when she was first turned into a vampire. If you get bitten at age 12, you will look 12 forever. Age 64, you will look 64 forever. 25 forever. You get the gist. Anyways, you will have a lot of time to do what you wish in the world, see the wonders of Tamriel, read, learn, experience, almost unlimited potential time on Tamriel. I would list that for sure as one of the pros of being a vampire, and among the pros are also things like enhanced strength, speed, agility, magical ability, additional powers, seduction, improvements to sneaking, etc. The specifics vary a lot between the different vampire clans and bloodlines, but vampires at least receive some of these many benefits, possibly all depending on the particular type. We'll get into those later with specific known bloodlines, but let's talk about the eye in the sky, the thing floating above everyone's head, the big question mark: what about the sun? The vampire's worst enemy. It is the sunlight that ruins a vampire's day. Well, actually, I don't know if a vampire can have a good day because they are often sick, burning, or dying when exposed to it. This is one of the major barriers in a vampire's life, and it makes it very hard to integrate themselves into society without the aid of magic, or in some cases, enough feeding will do the trick. I think that is also one of the hardest things to undergo as a vampire, is the fact that you will not be able to easily be a part of society unless your friends and family are also vampires. It's likely you could end up quite isolated. There is also the fact that you have a lust for blood and you will need to feed, especially if you wish to blend into society, considering that the more starved of blood you are, the more vampiric you seem to become. Imagine if one day you lost it and ended up feeding on or killing someone you cared about. You may also become concerned with your ability to control yourself. The last little neat thing, I guess, is that you can still drink and eat normal food, but by no means need it, so you can still enjoy those luxuries. So to clarify, the base changes are immortality, weakened or burnt by the sun, bloodlust, and improved physical and magical traits, which vary between bloodlines, which we will talk about. You will also have to consider that physical features can change, including red or glowing eyes, gaunt faces, sometimes with bat-like features, pale skin, fangs, the works. But then again, feeding regularly can reduce a vampiric appearance. However, that does not seem to be the case with all vampires. Look at the bat-like Volca Ha Vampires, who seem to be feasting non-stop in their castle, but still remain unchanged in appearance. So perhaps when you get to a certain level of ancient or closer to a purer bloodline, the vampiric features are more prominent and unchanging, which again means that blending into society will be a bit hard. However, if you have some giant isolated castle to chill out in with all your vampire buddies, then perhaps it ain't so bad. So you can sort of get an idea of what your opinion about the issue is now, knowing the general deal with being a vampire. Quite honestly, at this point, even though there are some sucky parts of being a vampire, I feel as if I would choose to become one, and I think it is worthwhile. The immortality especially appeals, as well as the cool abilities, and you would have so much time to explore and see the wondrous world of Tamriel. I'd especially dive right in and do it if I was getting old. But then again, it depends. Perhaps I would have convictions to other gods, and to be honest, being stuck in Cold Harbor if you die sounds like a shit show. There is also the moral question though. In the eyes of the gods, you are an abomination. In the eyes of most people, you are a monster, and for good enough reason, considering that you are now a human mosquito who needs that human blood for sustenance. Now, you don't need to kill people that you feed off, so it doesn't necessarily mean you have to kill innocents, but what I would be worried about is that over time you would start to be distanced from normal people, and in all likelihood will feel superior, and a likely result of that is treating them like sheep or cattle. Look at the attitudes of the vampires in the Volca Ha castle. It's just something to think about when becoming a vampire. But let's talk bloodlines and see which we would actually pick. Let's start with one that most people here would be the most familiar with, the Volca Ha Vampires. The Volca Ha are the most powerful vampires in Skyrim and dominate the land. In the game Skyrim, if you become a vampire, you are part of the Volca Ha bloodline. Now, the purity of that bloodline may differ depending on who infected you. The pure-blooded vampires have the ability to turn into the mighty vampire lord. This monstrous form, as you would know, is very, very powerful and grants blood magic abilities. However, the Volca Ha blood thins with every generation, so if infected by one of the lesser Volca Ha, you will not have this ability. But let's just assume you get bitten by Harken like you do in the Dawnguard DLC. Also, thing of note is that the Volca Ha vampires don't seem to burn and die when exposed to the sun. They do, however, become weakened, losing health, magicka, and stamina, so for a real-life equivalent, I imagine you would feel sick, tired, and less magically capable. Also, the varying levels of blood satiation affect that too, but let's answer the question, is it worth becoming a Volca Ha vampire? I would say absolutely. I feel as if it's one of the better options of all the vampires. Powerful vampire lord form, you aren't totally fucked by the sun, you can chill out in a cool castle, you can sneak easier and have more powerful illusion magic, and you have all the seduction and bats and cool stuff. However, you don't have the same physical attributes that some of the other vampires have. But I'd say that's counteracted easily by the fact that you have the vampire lord form. So is it worth being a Volca Ha Vampire? Yes, in my opinion. Remember to leave your answers down below in the comments, but let's move on to other bloodlines. We'll now talk about the vampires of the Elder Scrolls Online, those vampires of Lemay Beowulf's direct bloodline. Now this bloodline has one advantage over all other bloodlines, and that is that the sun does not negatively affect them. They are simply just stronger at night. They also have abilities like other vampires such as invisibility, but overall I think this is a hands down yes for me. You basically took the worst part of being a vampire and removed it. I think yes, absolutely, it's worth it. I would become a vampire of Lemay's bloodline. Now we also have the Cyrodiilic vampires of Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Now these vampires are considered the most civilized of vampires, most excellently blending in with society, stealthily feeding, but they are also affected by sunlight, especially poorly if they have not fed in a while. The sun burns their skin, and if they do not feed for a long while, they will not be able to hide the monsters that they are. It is these vampires that come with some very powerful abilities along with their drawbacks. Their powers only get stronger the longer they go without blood, and they have resistance to physical weapons, boosts to strength, speed, and willpower, acrobatics, hand-to-hand, athletics, sneak, and various magics. Overall, you are very well rewarded. You also cannot be paralyzed. I think this kind of vampire is worthwhile, mainly because of how fast and powerful you could become. Imagine just being able to jump to the second story of a house and run 20% faster, or punch someone across the room. It would be pretty awesome. And there's just these base passive attribute changes that really persuade me. And on top of that, you can blend rather well with society, but you would need to feed regularly, so yes to that. I just realized so far I'm saying yes to all the vampires, and my base answer was also yes, so you can see how I like the idea of becoming a vampire, but the reason I want to separate these is so I can see your guys' responses, see if you would take one bloodline but refuse another. If we took the vampires of Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, there were 3 clans, and they were actually quite similar to their Cyrodiilic counterparts, and each clan had some added bloodline specific boosts, but overall, I don't think I actually would be a vampire in Morrowind, if only because it isn't really safe. With strong anti-necromancy sentiment and hatred of vampires in Morrowind, it would be far harder to live a somewhat normal life, and I feel as if it's far more dangerous, so perhaps I don't think it's worthwhile in Morrowind, at least during the Third Era. There are also other bloodlines, but not much is known about them besides a little unique ability or bonus, and I think it's probably safe to assume they are all very much the same as Cyrodiilic vampires. As a final wrap up, yes, I think being a vampire in the Elder Scrolls world is worthwhile, but among the different bloodlines, I definitely have preferences. Lemay's bloodline and the lack of weakness to sun that comes with it is very, very appealing and would most likely be my choice, followed by Volca Ha and Cyrodiilic vampires. I think the most appealing thing for me is the immortality, and with Lemay's bloodline, that comes with very little drawback. So what's your choice? Do you think being a vampire in the Elder Scrolls universe is worth it? And if so, what bloodline would you want to be a part of? Answer down below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. These worth it videos are really fun to think about and to write, so I hope you enjoy them as much as I enjoy making them. Thanks again for watching. Social media links are in the description. My name is Scott from FudgeMuppet, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again next time.